got the signal. All right, the meeting's called to order. First of all, are there any announcements besides the fact that Tom is missing?
In Italy, you mean?
In Italy, yes. An excused absence,
Yes.
as they call it. Any other announcements of the general nature? Okay, public appearances for items not on the agenda. Any public appearances? There being none, shall we move on to the commission reports? Let's start with comments on information items and lab activities. Shall we start with you, Paul? Or?
Well, I have nothing new to report other than the Roanoke Park Toddy Library had its open house in the lab that you and I both went to. And I'm real excited to go to the first advisory board. They actually have my name on it, so I need to show up, which is next week, I believe.
Okay. Julia?
There's been no lab meetings for Santa Rosa since our meeting on March 25th.
Well, I can make up for that because Guerneville had a meeting and Sebastopol had a meeting. So reporting from Sebastopol, the Friends reported that their January book sale netted more than $5,000, one of their larger. There's currently a great art show at the Sebastopol Library with, let me just get her name, I get it right. Carol Setterland, and she creates large figures from massive water-soaked logs. There's currently some discussion about the art committee and the use of the forum room for art, which then precludes other programs from happening for 3 weeks, twice a year. So there's some discussion on how that can be worked out to be better and more satisfactory so that, you know, especially the children's programs don't get bumped completely from for 3 weeks, twice a year. So that's ongoing. That whatever change might be made, and that wouldn't start until next year. So there's this art show, and there's one in October that will go on as scheduled. And this art show, they have set it up so that children can actually go in and touch the standing art, which is pretty cool, I think. The other Sebastopol information is Sebastopol is pretty close to finishing work on their draft lab handbook. They plan to have copies available for the countywide lab meeting on the 18th. And Judy Rice, who has been the chair for a couple of years at Sebastopol, has become overextended. She's got too much going on. She's on the current grand jury, and she also is the chair of the Human Rights Commission, so she feels like she has way too much to do. So she's stepping down as chair, although she'll still be on the Library Advisory Board. So Phil Brownell will take over the duties of the chair until they do another election. In Guerneville, one thing I should say is both Guerneville and Sebastopol will have their next book sale, unfortunately, on the same dates in May 15th through 18th. In Guerneville, we have 2 new members who came to their first meeting and seemed to enjoy it very much. There's been a lot of work handled by the County of Sonoma, who owns the Guerneville building, so they've been doing work outside. They completed some ADA work that needed to be done at the entrance to make the entrance more accessible. And they're also painting and doing some work around the trash container. There was a gold resolution that Mari and KRCB attended on February 26th. The county had a gold resolution about the Big Read being the month of March, which sounds like it was really nice. This has been the most successful year for the River Friends of the Library. They, in addition to their regular book sales, they've found a third party to sell books on the internet. They're working on getting their nonprofit status, and their general meeting will be the 13th. And one interesting thing was the River Friends purchased 16 reading glasses for the library so that people who showed up without their reading glasses would have something to use. And they found some really inexpensive ones, I think, at the dollar store. So, okay, that's all.
I've not attended a lab meeting since the March 25th.
Welcome, Tom. We thought you had flown away.
No, thank you. I apologize. I got tied up.
We're doing commissioner reports, comments and major items from the lab meeting, sir. Do you want to go next, Mary?
I have nothing to report. Our lab meeting is this week.
Okay, the Windsor lab meeting is tomorrow, so I have nothing from there. The Healdsburg lab meeting was a week ago. The garden that has been dedicated to Millie Howie is completely finished now. Furniture will be there within the next couple of weeks, and there will probably be an official opening of it, and I would certainly love to see anyone who can make it to get there.
Will you let us know?
I certainly will, as soon as I get a date. A very successful book sale. I do not know, I didn't have the final numbers yet, but it was one of the better ones that they've had. One of the things that came up is on notifications of holds and such. If they're given on the telephone, over the telephone, a number of people have complained that they have not gotten them in Spanish. I thought we had been doing that. I know it goes out on email, it's in Spanish, but on the telephone notifications, several people said they would like to receive these notifications of holds and such in Spanish. And the final thing is they're talking about...
You want Mike to answer that now or comment on that now?
I'm sorry?
You want Mike to comment on
Yeah,
that?
would you please?
Oh, sorry, it's on. We are doing the email and paper notifications, bilingual Spanish and English. There's upgrades possible in the future to do the Spanish language for the teleserve, what's called, but at this point, we're not doing them yet.
Okay.
But it's something that we will look for.
That's-
So what you're saying is it requires a software upgrade?
Software and hardware, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I will let them know, and they just want to be sure, a couple of folks, that it was not being ignored, so I'll report back on that. The other thing that they're talking about, and it's just a germ of an idea right now, is to put together some kind of a children's computer club. I don't know how that's going to develop, but that's what they would like to do. There are a number of people on the lab who are interested in conversant with computers, and they thought it would be a good idea to have a computer club somehow centered at the library. So I'll keep you informed on that.
Okay. I have two things from March from Petaluma that I think I just need to share. I think the staff has maybe heard these before, but they're the kind of things that warm my heart. One of the participants in the Big Read noticed that she mentioned that she did not like poetry. So she divided all the poems in the Big Read to read over 30 days to figure out how many she'd have to read each day. She started this task, and then one day when she was driving west of Petaluma, was struck by our Sonoma County spring. She found herself composing a poem. And when she returned home, she went online to request books about writing poetry. We'll have to see where this takes her, but I think we have unforeseen consequences of big reads. The other is, I don't know if anybody knows this because I didn't, but apparently there's a Facebook page about a young man in Petaluma who calls himself Batman, and he dresses in costume and walks around town and does good, like Batman should. And he's a big hit with the kids and teens in town. And on a recent morning, the library staff found an envelope in the book drop with an autographed picture of Petaluma's Batman, and with the heroes, a hero can be anyone on the picture. A handwritten note said, "For the children's library," and the envelope was stuffed with $125. The staff wasn't sure how the library got on Petaluma Batman's radar, but it really made the day. They've decided to use the money to buy Batman books for the library collection. And our lab meets later in the month. Thought that was fun. Okay, moving on. Committee reports. The Joint Powers Committee has not met, but
Well, there has been no review committee meeting there's not one in the month of April, but are two in May. And so the Joint Powers Subcommittee has not met yet.
right. And the first county meeting is May 4th,
Third,
May 3rd. Okay.
correct. And then there's one the very last Friday in May.
May 25th.
Was May 25th?
No, May
30-something. 31st?
I believe that's it.
Yeah, I think it's the last Friday in May, whatever day that is.
31st.
It's always on a Friday.
Okay. The Revenue Committee report?
We haven't met since before the last meeting.
Okay. All right. Do we ask for public comment after this? No. Yes. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes. The committee will review and approve minutes from the past two meetings with the summary format.
Do we do one motion for both?
I believe there are two motions on the paper. Maybe because, I don't know if everybody was here or...
Well, I move we approve the minutes for both meetings.
Okay.
Second?
All right. Any comments, questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Correspondence and press coverage. From what I saw of the press coverage in the folder, there's notifications of programs. Anything else? Anybody see? Okay. The consent calendar. There are no items on the consent calendar. On to action by resolution. Okay, the first item is the budget policy. We've reviewed this over the last two meetings. Are there any other questions, comments?
There was one section at the end that was added after
Right,
the
to
last
it.
meeting.
Right.
And it's highlighted in, I think I highlighted it, underlined it in italics on page 5.
I think this captures what we'd requested.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Need a resolution, you need an action.
I need a motion.
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission adopt the budget policy for fiscal year 2013-14.
I'll second.
Are there any, is there any public comment? No?
First ask for commission discussion.
Yeah, is there any commission discussion? Aside from that, just a change. No? Public comment? There being none, any other comments? Shall we call for the vote? No, you have.
I just want to make sure that people who are here understand that this is a policy that was discussed at the last meeting and changes were requested and those changes have been made. So for those who were not at the last budget workshop, this is not the commission simply adopting a policy that we have not discussed and with no comment at all.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Policy on post-employment benefits. Again, this has been discussed at a previous meeting.
There are.
There are changes.
They're supposed to be highlighted in italics and underlined.
Okay, so there's one at line 25,
And then another on the other.
and another one on the last page, 1, 2, and 3.
On the last page, item number 5, we are, I guess technically we're doing pay-as-you-go, but we are going, but I think what we're aiming for is to do some funding as opposed to just pay-as-you-go, even though it's not fully funding. Is there a way to put that sort of middle bit in there? I would like to see our policy be that even if it's not fully funded, we put something aside each year.
Well, my understanding is that we adopt a policy each year.
No, this is, you adopt a resolution each year, this policy
Okay,
is.
all right, so any other,
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to do what Julia wants.
Well, I mean, I don't, I'm hoping it's not just semantics that I understand we're not fully funding, but I would like a policy to say, on top of what is owing this year, we will actually try to set some money aside every year.
Well, can we just use some of the same language that's on 7.1 on the budget policy that we just approved, where we have the language saying that, we will pay the annual costs of current retirees pay-as-you-go, and we'll allocate available funds in the fund balance to pre-fund the OPEB liability to the extent possible as part of the annual budget process. So somehow mirror that similar language, because I think that captures what our intention, right? We can't fully fund it, but we're starting to fund it.
We're designating some money each year, yes.
I would not include the phrase fund balance in that sentence.
Okay.
Money could come from our operating budget.
At some point, it's going to have to.
It's going to have to.
Available funds. Yeah, okay, so maybe it's just allocate funds,
Right, undefined.
And allocate funds as possible,
I think in this one, we used as feasible,
as feasible.
as financially feasible.
As financially feasible for the short term.
Well, I know we've established our goal as fully funding for the long term.
Right.
Okay,
With the intention of fully funding the ADC in the long term.
yes, thank you.
can we vote on that with these changes, or do we have
Yeah.
to table it?
No, you can vote.
With those changes, can you read back
Can
then
you
what
read
it's
back the changes?
going to say?
It's a friendly amendment, is it? Who made the motion?
Oh, we haven't made a motion
Oh,
yet.
okay. Acknowledge that the library's fiscal limitations will keep it from moving away from pay-as-you-go and allocating funds as financially feasible, but with the intention of fully funding the ADC in the long term. That's still a little,
Yeah.
Are you deleting the phrase for the short term?
no. Something about that sentence offends me because it's so run-on.
How about,
We could break it up into, I hate to do editing in public like this. We could break it up into two sentences, so in the short term, period, and then have a number 6. It says, with the intention of fully funding the ADC in the long term.
That's not quite what you said, though.
I guess what I'm concerned about is it looks like, I guess however you define short term.
Until we have enough money to fully fund it.
Right.
But
But my concern, and perhaps again, I don't mean to be too fussy here, but my concern is that I would like to see something that says, even though we're doing pay-as-you-go in the short term, the years we have to do pay-as-you-go, we will put aside, the policy is to put aside something in addition to pay-as-you-go whenever we can.
Right, and that's not what, and allocating funds as financially feasible. It's still not, I still don't like it. I would suggest that it's not critical that you pass it. Let me see if I can, today, because you've got the resolution for this year that has to be done as part of the budget process. Just let me clean up the language, and rather than trying to do editing by committee tonight.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so we're tabling this,
Postponing.
postponing?
So the next thing is the annual resolution.
Right, the next thing is the annual resolution to, for this year's funding of the post-retirement benefits. Comments? From the commission?
So this is the 500,000 that we're doing this year.
Well, this is the pay-as-you-go and the 500,000
Okay.
from the fund balance.
Which I think is what we discussed at our last two meetings.
Right.
And this is what we talked about doing, and I
Right.
think this is consistent with, that previous discussion, so.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Any further comment from the commission? We have talked about this a lot. Any comments from the public?
Hi, my name's Tom Popenick. I'd like to ask you a question about how you're funding this, the committed fund balance, as it's called, that according to your policy, that's a fund balance that needs to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. And is that, if I can finish, if that fund balance is being approved just in the budget, is this your highest level of commitment to actually funding these other post-employment benefits, as opposed to putting this money in a trust, which seems like a little more substantial fund commitment than just to say, well, we're just going to put $500,000 over here till we change our mind? Because that's basically what you're doing with this fund balance in a committed fund as opposed to a trust fund. And if the idea is to fund the benefits of your employees going forward, I think a little more commitment than just putting it in a committed fund balance is appropriate. I did listen to the tape. I wasn't able to be here last meeting. I did listen to the tape and listen to Will's explanation, but the idea that you can't put something in a committed, that because something might change in the future, you shouldn't put it in a trust now. I don't know why you didn't explore that more, and perhaps you could have more discussion about that.
Other comments? Thank you, Tom.
Well, at the highest level of approval, the commission approves it, and then it goes to the Board of Supervisors anyway. And they, in the process of approving the budget, approve the allocation of the fund balance. So it's done at both levels. The trust fund, once it goes into a trust, it's irrevocable and you cannot get it back. And as I remember, that was the reason for the commission's not feeling that they were yet in a position to put $500,000 totally out of reach when things are still so volatile financially.
And my understanding of our previous discussion is that when we talk about being able to fully fund in the long term, it will be in the form of a trust. That it is our intent to hopefully reach a economic position where we can do that.
I view this as a small but necessary step in the right direction. The full-blown solution is absolutely to have a fully funded trust for this, from my view. This is, the first step that this commission has done beyond pay-as-you-go. So it's a small step. It's not where we need to be, but it's where we're starting.
I might add too that just in terms of my sense of the commission, the commitment to this is a very large part of what we see hanging over our heads, and feel the responsibility. So I think I agree, this is a step. Other comments from?
I'm comfortable with doing it this way. I don't think we have an awful lot of alternatives at the moment, absent lots of money. This is where we are, and I think the commitment is the most significant thing. We know where we have to go. We just can't get there this year or next year, perhaps.
Other comments from the commission? Okay, a vote. All those in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Anybody opposed? Right, now we're on to the preliminary budget, which we've spent a good amount of time on.
And I just want to reiterate, because it's come up several times over the last week or two, that this is a preliminary budget. And we have several options after the year closes to revise it, especially once we know what the final end-of-year property tax revenue looks like, to try to reduce the use of fund balance, which is what we've ended up doing the last 3 years. But that's not to say that staff is not concerned about the $760,000 use of fund balance for operating costs.
Just for my information, in the past years, how does that amount compare to what it's been in the past years
It's,
at this point in the
I think
budget
it's been as
calendar?
high as $1 million and as low as 400 or 500,000 last year.
Okay.
But we work on reducing that every way we can. But we have to meet the Board of Supervisors, deadlines for submitting a preliminary budget. So,
And does this budget work on the assumption that the salaries and employee benefits are stable from last year to, same as last year to this year?
same as the current year,
Yes,
yes.
current year to next year.
Sandy, I had one question, and you maybe reviewed this the last couple times we looked at this, and I just wasn't recalling when I was going over it one more time, so humor me here. You probably already told me. But I was wondering why the assigned capital asset maintenance fund, which is $750,000, was so high compared to the prior years. And I'm looking at that preliminary budget
Okay.
figure.
The reason is we had not done there had not been a rational process for allocating the money in the past years. It was just done by percentages. So this is the first year in which we've attempted to move toward a more rational allocation process. So that's why there's a difference. If you'll remember, one of the priorities for the Budget and Finance section for this spring is to come up with an asset replacement schedule so we know how much needs to be in that fund.
So is this kind of a bottom-up driven number that says that's the amount we think we actually are going to need in calendar year 13-14?
No, it's not slated for expenditure in 13-14.
Okay.
This is the fund balance.
Okay.
So it's simply the allocation of our savings account, a portion of our savings account for asset replacement.
Over time.
Over some
Over
extended
time.
period of time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions, comments from the commission?
Do we have a motion?
I don't know that we have we have a motion yet? No, I don't believe so.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right. Any comments from the public? There being none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to focus and finish. This is the, this document is the document of focus and finish for next, the focus and finish issues for next year.
For the library year that started March 1st.
Started March 1st, all right? Again, this has been discussed at the last two meetings. And so, are there any questions or comments from the commission?
I have a
Ask
concern.
for a motion.
I'd like a motion. How about a motion first? Okay,
I move we approve the focus and finish priorities for the fiscal year 2013-14.
Library year.
Library year 2013-14.
all right. And you had a...
Second.
Okay, you had a question?
Well, I have a concern. We've discussed in the past, I am concerned that Director Cooper is, has too much on her plate here, that she's the lead on a number of very large projects. And in the past, things have occasionally gotten bogged down, and I do not want to see that happen again. So while these are all priorities, I'm wondering if we want to designate for Director Cooper, if not this time, at least sometime in the future, what we want, how we would like her to prioritize some of these projects. Because I note, you know, Sandy's lead on, well, almost all of the, well, let's see, the you know, hiring the, I'm sorry, doing the classification study, reconfiguring book returns.
Actually, I'm just the lead on the procurement part of classification and compensation study.
Okay. Right, Patrick's the lead on the rest of it.
Right.
There's all of the online, all of the policies.
And that's just getting Rebecca organized and going. It's her task to actually do it.
Okay.
Okay, but what I'm hearing you're asking, instead of going through each of these, is you're saying you would like for the commission to look at these and give our priorities to them? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
I guess I shouldn't be just thinking out loud here, but perhaps I have a concern that if things, if it does turn out to be more work than there are hours in the day, we would then need to know that and make some adjustments in terms of the priorities.
Why don't we see how it goes? And then if I start running into problems, getting them started and on time and finished on time, I'll come back to you all and say, which ones do you want me to do? Or if there's
Okay.
discussion of additional items, I'll ask you whether they trump these.
Okay?
Also, we do review focus and finish every month.
Yes, we do. And there are start dates, but there are no goal end dates,
Yes, they all have goal ending dates.
which,
By June, and look at the first part of each sentence.
okay.
Yes, Julia made the motion.
Okay, in a second.
Sid, I have a question, if I might. Sandy, on 1.2.1, this is, something is in progress here. Could you expand a little bit on that and
Well, I'm
explain?
collecting sample requests for proposals so that I can write the request for proposal for the procurement of a firm to do the classification.
And these requests are going to,
They'll go out generally and we'll do outreach to encourage firms, qualified firms to
that do this
bid.
kind of stuff?
Yes,
Okay,
to bid.
okay.
Other commission comments, questions? I saw a shaking head no. Public comment, public input? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Video
Anybody
recording.
opposed?
Oh, she keeps reminding me. I hear ayes from everybody. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Sandy. Moving on to video recording and indexing of meetings. Do you want to fill us in a little bit, Sandy, what's going on?
Well, you voted to approve a 6-month pilot to have these videotaped, so there'd be a complete and detailed record of the meetings. And then we would just do summary minutes. Excuse me. Helena had a concern because of the challenge of finding specific items. So Rebecca has provided some options for doing that. There's still, the Community Media Center has another 6 months for sure. Their fate has been, to some extent, in the hands of the Santa Rosa City Council. The Assistant City Manager, and I think it would be helpful to have some direction from the commission, has suggested that one option for the commission down the road might be to meet in the city council chambers and use their equipment. And so that's another thing we need some direction on, is whether you want us to pursue that or not. So there are two motions. One is whether you want to continue to videotape. The second is if you want to try the third index for option for indexing. And then the second is, and then the third is some sense of your direction on using city council chambers if that need be, if the Community Media Center is no longer able to help us.
Did they say how much they would charge for that use of their?
Rebecca, I don't think Eric has named an amount.
Because that would be good information.
And it's dependent on how many staff members they would need to be there.
I think they're still working on it. We have an appointment to talk to him on Wednesday, but only if the commission is interested in pursuing that as one option.
And that would presume that our current setup would no longer be an option for us?
That's correct.
Okay. And we know that the current option, the current approach is we have at least 6 months, right? So then, in terms of the option 1, 2, and 3 here, just to address that for the next 6 months, because I would presume we wouldn't make a change until we needed to make a change, right? So then in terms of the third option, it looked like it was the most cost-effective, certainly, but I did wonder, is that method really going to be limited to, less than an hour of staff time?
I would invite Rebecca to speak to the
I
three
mean,
options.
It's
okay.
I think, let's go with the motion 1 first and then go to the option, the 3 options second. So that we decide whether or not to continue with the video recording. And then after we do that, we'll look at the option 3 option. Because there are a couple of things that I think that are kind of interesting to think about. I know that Paul at his first meeting mentioned the possibility of transcription.
The sound quality, we discussed that as an option, and we don't feel the sound quality is adequate to lend itself to transcription without the video to accompany it.
Okay, so the other thing that was in my mind is that some commissioners have expressed the desire that we get out to different libraries to meet, and we're limited now by here, and then if we are in the city chambers of the city hall, then we're still limited to this one location instead of moving to other places. But if we decide to go ahead with video recording, are we stuck here? Not stuck here. Do we get to stay here? Or is there a way that we get to ever go out to other branches?
Well, I think part of that's dependent on the size of the meeting room and whether we have room for the equipment the commission and observers in those rooms. And if you stop and think about some of them, they've been crowded without the equipment. So I think we could possibly meet at other libraries, but not all the other libraries. That would have to be explored.
And you said, excuse me,
Oh.
and you said the sound quality wasn't good enough for the recording?
Right, we discussed it, the staff discussed it after we discussed the various options and just didn't feel that the sound transcription would lend itself to the same degree of, or for the same purpose as this.
This probably isn't the time to talk about this, but if we had lapel mics on, that would improve the quality and it would make us more mobile.
Actually, the sound quality is not so much the mics as just the setup of the room, I think. Kathy could tell us. I don't know if Kathy Altman's still here.
Okay.
There are obviously advantages to video recording these meetings. My question is, how many people watch the video recording? Do we have any idea? I mean, if one person is watching this,
Yeah, it's on if you go and look on them, it says how many people have viewed them. It's not a big number.
Double digits yet?
I don't think so. I mean, I was looking at them and, it's right there, on there of how many views. I assume that's the correct number, what you visually see when you go on there. One was 45 and one was 25, I think.
that's certainly 25 or 45 for a single meeting?
Uh-huh. I
Okay.
think the one, I didn't memorize these numbers, so I just noticed them, but my recollection was the earlier one, maybe one of the first ones we did was like 44 views. And then some of the more recent ones, it seems to me it was in the 20s, 21, 20, maybe. Are you going on there? You can look. Yeah, there you go. So those were the numbers I'm remembering. I didn't recall seeing any big numbers.
But part of the reason was a reduction in staff time.
No, I understand that, yeah, because to record all of the minutes really takes a great deal of time. I do think we give up, as Tim pointed out, a very significant advantage to visit some of the other libraries. This has been mentioned to me, as you guys used to meet here once in a while, we never see you anymore.
Yeah.
That's something that I think we really have to, in this context, we have to keep in mind. We do become, through the magic of video, we become universal, but we are also, I think, withdrawing a little bit the personal contact. So I think we're still on a pilot with this, are we not? We're not committed.
This would be well, nothing's permanent. We could get into a discussion philosophically about that, but this is to move from a pilot to a permanent arrangement.
But as I understand it, it's only 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, the Community Media Center's future with the city of Santa Rosa is only for 6 months, but we don't know.
But could we say, if we decided we wanted, because those are good points about not moving around, but if we were decided, let's stick with it for another 6 months, not necessarily commit ourselves forever down this path, but say, we'll do it another 6 months, but maybe identify other locations that are large enough that we could have the guys set up there.
And is there a reason? If we can go to the city's chamber and they're willing to accept us, then perhaps if we want to move to other towns, there are locations the town might make available to us that are a larger location, so we can have a meeting there and bring the video with us, instead of being restricted to the library.
I think the point is to be in the library, though.
Well,
I think I would
I
need some
think-
clarification on the point of moving from town to town if you're not moving to the library.
Oh, I think part of the point is just to move to that community and make it easy and have people come from that community that wouldn't ordinarily drive to Santa Rosa from Petaluma or from Sonoma or from Cloverdale or Healdsburg. They feed us in Cloverdale. I'd like to go back there.
But that's at the library, just remember that.
The other thing that I think that we've lost in the not going to the different branches is that when we have visited the branches, we have put the labs at each branch on the agenda and had them a chance to interact with us. So if we were to continue with the videotaping and be delightfully here, perhaps we could institute a policy where we invite labs to come to us if they're willing to, so that we can keep that aspect of the move around going on.
Well, I think there's a middle ground where you could ask us to explore more thoroughly which venues we might be able to videotape in.
Yeah.
And what the constraints are and all, rather than to just assume that we can't move.
Okay.
I do think it's valuable to go out to the different communities, and we've had participation, in different locales that clearly were because we were there, and that they wouldn't necessarily come with their kids and all that, all the way here.
But I think if we're going to go to those other communities, there's a real benefit of going to the library.
Yeah.
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 I mean,
But that same benefit doesn't accrue to being in this library? I guess I'm trying to figure out if we move to the city chambers in 6 months or in 8 months or whatever, does that have the same effect as not being in the library when we travel?
I'm not wild about going to the city council chambers.
Okay.
I just have a technical question. If we go to the city council chambers, there would be a location for closed sessions if we needed to?
We have not gotten that far,
Okay.
but I'm sure there must be something because
Because
they
they
have
have to have
closed
it,
sessions
yes.
too.
All right, so do we have a motion on this? Do you want to say something?
Oh, I just, being a technologist in a lot of ways, I'm amazed in this day of wireless internet and webcasting that we can't come up with a mobile solution to go to other libraries. I mean,
It's just the equipment
Yeah.
that's involved and the space that's involved
Right.
because the rooms are much smaller. The rooms are some of the rooms are
Okay.
tiny.
So,
So you're saying a cell phone video won't do it?
No.
No.
so I'm hearing that there basically are two issues that we're kind of looking at in this motion. One of them is agreeing to continue to videotape. The other is to explore whether we can go to other venues and whether, how to handle the being available to the community in other places. And it seems to me that that can be something we can ask staff to deal with, and we can decide about the motion separate of that. Is that true? Am I? Yeah. Okay. And we have a motion? Has somebody moved this yet?
Sure.
Okay, motion number one.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
All right, and we have had discussion, so is there public input on this, public comment?
My name's Daphne Matthews, and I'm Tech 3 at Sonoma Valley Library. And last year, I've worked there 22 years, and last year was the first time we ever had a meeting there. It was packed. And I know that our community really cares about the library, so I really want to encourage you going from library to library because it gives people a voice that they haven't had before, especially with all the changes. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Nixon. I would love, Paul, I appreciate your comment, and I would love to see the commission continue to pursue the concept of keeping your meetings within the building in which you're representing. I echo my colleagues' comments too about staying closer to the library. There's just some sort of I can't think of the right word, but some sort of a sense that if you move outside of your library for your meetings, there's just feels disconnected, that you might disconnect both from your community and from your building and from the people that you really trying to reach. And just, I agree completely with you, Paul, that there must be some simple way in this 21st century to simply videotape and make these meetings accessible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comment from the commission on vote on number one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Being none, we'll move on to motion number 2. All right, do you want to fill us in a bit on this, Sandy, or
Rebecca would be the one.
Rebecca?
Hi. Do you have questions, or do you want me to just speak?
Well,
a little bit?
when I had read through the write-up, certainly the option 3, which is, I presume, your time in doing identifying the index or the time slots, appears to be the most cost-effective. I just wanted to make sure that said a half hour to an hour, is a realistic assessment of how long it will really take to do the whole thing.
I think it is based on a trial that I did with the most recent commission minutes.
Okay.
So you're just taking notes you're just noting times as you go, and then
Yes.
and then later you're able to post.
And matching it up, making sure it corresponds with the actual video.
You can multitask.
So you get to attend the meeting, and then you get to watch it all over again. Lucky you.
That's what doing minutes is like, except longer.
And she's one of the 25.
That's right.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to thank you for taking the time to figure out a way to do that. I think it'll be really helpful in the long run. Thanks.
Welcome.
Will that, maybe it says it there, but I have slipped. Will the index then be on the page so that people will,
On the page or the screen?
on the screen so that when you decide to look at the meeting, it'll say,
Yeah, if you hit play, you'll
no,
see,
in other words,
Wait,
if you,
let her finish.
okay, go ahead.
well, maybe I'm not understanding your question, but when you hit play, you can, as you've said, scrub forward to a certain,
I know, I understand that. My question is, will there be a list that people can see that this item was taken up at this minute?
On the summary minute.
Like the agenda item 5 is at so-and-so.
I
Would it be
don't-
on the summary minutes? The
it would
time?
be on the summary minutes. I don't know that there's a way to include that with this video.
Then how are people going to be able to use the timeline is so that those who are interested in a particular
I think you could
discussion
jump
can-
from the summary minutes.
You'd have to look at the minutes,
Minutes
see
back
the
and forth.
notation and
Okay.
then find it.
Just
And the
follow that.
summary minutes come out before the video usually, right?
Well,
Or-
No.
we can start posting the draft minutes for people if we need to, because they don't take very long to do.
Okay, so they will have the time into where I would scrub.
Yes.
The homepage where the video sits has room for a PDF of the minutes.
Okay, well then,
Is that
that
right?
would be the place to include it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. So if it's there, people could look at it, watch, or
Yes.
go
Well,
to it.
We actually mount these someplace else.
Could
So,
they be at both locations?
We could post them both locations,
the minutes.
the minutes,
Well,
or
if-
just the agenda with the time. if
Right.
That's the easiest way.
It's the
to-
timeline that people need to go with this website, and I don't know if people are at this website will understand that they need to go to the minutes to figure out where things are.
Right, that's true.
So there's got to be
Yeah.
some bridge connecting them.
The other thing you may want to be aware of, Sandy mentioned that we have a meeting with Eric McHenry from the city this Wednesday, and he believes that we will be able to piggyback on their Granicus account if we are recorded in their council chambers.
But that would require that we go use their county chamber.
And it would also cost us money.
It would cost us a small amount of money to pay for a staff member to let us in and out, as well as if we continue to use Community Media Center, paying them. However, they do have a fixed camera there that he's led me to believe could be used without an operator. So some other options floating around.
Excuse me, the system they have, does that take the audio and transcribe it?
It doesn't transcribe it from what I can tell. Did you get a chance to look at that Granicus proposal that was included in the packet?
I think I kind of briefly.
I don't
read,
believe
so
that that's
it
one of
didn't-
the-
I didn't see transcription, the word transcription.
Yeah, I don't believe that's one of the options.
Okay.
But it does post the agenda alongside the meeting recording, and it tracks along with the agenda items as they happen.
I believe in the proposal that it had, it led me to believe that there was other options that you could probably purchase. Maybe that's a transcription.
There are,
part.
but since we
Yeah.
would be jumping on their coattails
Yeah.
for this, I don't know what.
And for the record, I want to go with the least expensive.
I agree.
And I do like the idea of staying in the library, so.
Okay.
Okay, do we have this motion, has this motion been moved?
Now it is.
Now it is? And seconded, I believe. All right, any further questions from the commission? Comments? Public input? There being none, I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No. Do we need to authorize you to discuss things further with the city, or do we need to give you direction at this point? It sounded to me like maybe we're not that interested in it.
Well, that's what I would take away unless you,
I agree with the comments that it is important for us to maintain our physical presence at the library, along with, again, if we can go out to at least some of the other locations, I think that's important as well. I do think that we don't want to get disconnected from the
But if
library.
we lose the community media center,
You know, if we need to reevaluate what our options are in 6 months, then,
there are other media centers too in the county. Dorothy Bertucci's son actually is head of the one in Petaluma. So
If he
there are
still
other
lives, I'm
options.
not sure. He was. All right, management report? Questions?
Sandy, are the plans for the lab meeting, the all-county lab meeting, it looks like the first kind of planning meeting was held.
Rebecca's doing that.
Okay,
Perhaps she'd
Is
like
there
to
an
give you an
update?
update?
yeah,
How'd that go? Yeah.
good. Will we be using a third-party facilitator for that? I think last time we did, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, I'm assuming it will be chaired by Jane Snibby,
Yeah.
who's the chair of the plan.
Okay.
Yes.
And so the agenda is decided, and
The agenda is decided. We've asked all the lab members to give their input about it. But the group that was appointed by each lab was really responsible for generating that.
But there's time on there for Mike McGuire, right? And
There
discussion
is.
of the joint powers,
Yes.
the
He's
JRAC.
coming to give a presentation about
Does he know that?
the JRAC committee. He does, yeah.
And what other things are on the agenda?
Oh, I would need to look at it. Lab goals, discussion of how the lab members see their roles and how they would like that to be revised if possible, outreach, soliciting new members, those sorts of things.
Great.
Sounds good, thank you.
I have a question, is the Staff Innovation Fund Workshop, are those the grants? This is line 19.
I'm sorry, are those the grants?
Remember there were...
They're going to be able to apply for grants
Right.
as part of the process.
Okay, and that was held?
Now, there are 6 workshop sessions that the participants attend. that include topics on leadership and understanding your conflict management style and grant writing and making presentations and self-branding and any number of topics. And then at the next meeting, they'll be discussing their grant ideas at the next 2 meetings. And then the grant applications will go to the state library.
And the staff participation, is it pretty, I mean, are there a lot of people doing this? Or?
Well, it was a limited number, but
Right.
we invited staff, all staff who were interested to apply, and we were able to send all 21 who were interested to the workshops and to be part of it. So everybody who wanted to be is part of it.
And is that across the staff levels?
You
or
mean
is-
at all levels of staff and not, yes, it is. We have some Tech 3s and Tech 2s, as well as librarians.
Oh, this is good.
I just had a question about the funding for that. How is that funded?
It's from the state library.
The state is paying for the
Yeah.
21 people to go to this?
Right. The workshops have primarily been over in Napa, but we did host one at Petaluma. There are 3 libraries that are participating: Napa, City County, St. Helena, and Sonoma. We have it's about 40 participants all told, so our staff is about half of the participants. St. Helena is a little bitty. I think it's been fun for them to have the chance to learn some new things and talk with other staff and work on their projects.
So, sorry, but when they're away from, so these are all-day workshops, and when they're away from their jobs, how do we cover, since we're
The
short-staffed?
grant actually pays for extra help, too.
Oh, it does, okay, terrific.
Other questions or comments from the
Pays travel and extra help for the staff who go.
commission? I have a question about the staff updates. I noticed that there are a lot of assignments for extra help. As a matter of fact, I see a very familiar name on there, Anne Marie. But I was wondering, is this because we're beefing up the
Well, almost all the extra help people had gone to work full-time at the library, so the pool was very small.
okay.
So now that there was some money available to hire, we didn't have warm bodies to fill to help with extra help. So we recruited, so we have some new people or some
Returnees.
retiree returnees. We've done a recruitment for librarians too. It just happens that because Anne Marie didn't need to be trained extensively, having worked at the library for 35 years.
In Petaluma for a while.
Well, I think that she made just about everyone in the county.
Okay. Any questions, any further questions?
Well, are we talking about the financial report as well?
Sure, that's part of this issue.
Well, then I do have some questions.
Okay?
One of my questions is on page,
Do you have the revised version?
oh, maybe I don't.
The revised was on the table.
The revised version, let me see if it's the same. Hang on a moment. Yeah, so my question remains, on the written report we received, we're at 66.6% of the year has elapsed. And I didn't understand line 6103, our liability insurance. And from this written, from the,
We pay that bill in the fall.
wait, but here was my question. It says we've spent 96.2% of it, but when you go to line 6103, it looks like we're over budget, that we've spent like 130%. And I didn't understand how we got to the
No.
96%.
We've spent 67,351. 67,351. 67,351 is the 100% of the budget. 130% is the 130%. 130% is the 100% of the budget. 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 130 I don't know where that variance,
But we budgeted only 46,000.
no, we didn't, we budgeted 70,000.
Annual,
Annual
And
budget.
look at the
I
second to
see.
the right-hand column.
yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a timing thing. The
Okay.
year-to-date would probably just divide it up evenly, but you
Right.
probably just make a lump sum payment at whenever it's due.
Right. That's how much you would spend at 1/12 a month
Right.
in that budgeted year-to-date column.
Yeah.
Other questions about the financial? We did skip over the performance management status report. Are there any questions regarding that?
So it's not complete, or has it changed since the end of March? Because that wasn't March our deadline for,
The end of February was try to get them all done, and we're not quite there. That's correct. Some of the ones that are, for instance, the central library manager has 17 and she's done 12. That's probably the largest.
Right. But we've moved to 87% of the work plans are complete, right? Which certainly, movement in the right direction.
I think staff has really made a concerted effort to get them done.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of zeros in terms of overdue.
but again, just to reiterate, in order to do the performance reviews, you have to have got a work plan in place, right?
Right, it's a year-long process.
Yeah, so if the work plans are overdue, then we're kind of 2 years behind in the evaluations or more, which I think is a concern for the commission to make sure everybody is reviewed annually.
And we are certainly much closer to that than we were before.
Yes, kudos for that, but carry on.
I think the trick is going to be to make sure that they keep them up to date, because they are expected to do interim reviews at 6
Right.
months.
Well, I think we're happy to look at this every month and talk about it, if that will help.
Yes.
Other comments on the management report? None? None? Comments from the public? Now's the time.
Can I comment on this budget document? I'm new to this. My name is Heath Kurtz. I'm a library patron.
Excuse me, speak up for me.
Sure. My name is Heath Kurtz. I'm a library patron. And I was just looking at the back page here where it lists the annual budget for FY 12 and 13. And I see that the largest figure is for books and materials. And then there's $470,000 for utilities. And at the top, I thought maybe this was a typo. I don't have my reading glasses, but it appears to say that there's budgeted $115,000 for legal services. Could someone speak to that? That seems wildly out of line considering these other items. Thanks.
We've had a public employee relations board case that took a great deal of legal time. We've had other issues like EEOC complaints. Some of the cost has gone to labor negotiations, so it's a variety of things. Plus our costs for legal counsel at the county counsel's office, which we pay for too. So it's a range of issues that have cost us that much money.
Of the $115,000, how much is going toward negotiating with the employees? Of that 115, you said some of that is for negotiating? Did I
Yes,
understand
that's
that?
correct.
Yeah, and right at the moment, we can take that question into account and give you an answer at the next meeting.
Okay. Not something you know.
I'm sorry?
That's not something that you know.
I don't think we've broken out how many hours, it's all by the hour. I don't think we've broken out how much for so many hours devoted each of the different items, including the county council. We don't have that right in front of us.
Okay.
It's not a percentage that I have at the tip of my tongue, but it's.
We can get it for you.
It's available,
Thanks.
it's knowable.
Good, thank you.
Other public comment, questions? Okay, there's nothing to vote on there, so. Clicking along. Staff reports. The first one's regarding the recruitment for the chief financial officer. We received this electronically, and it wasn't in your packet, but it's on the table. Sandy, do you want to?
No, you all had just asked for a report, so here it is.
So has it been posted?
No, as I say here, we'll post it a week from today because we haven't had time to review it internally, and I want to make sure Mark and the management team have a time to look at it too.
I had two comments regarding the draft position description form, document 10.2.1.2. And these are really small little questions or whatever, but I thought I'd mention it. Under key results area number 3, where it's talking about the role of this individual regarding facilities. And the goal here says key results area, the library's facilities and grounds will be clean, inviting, and well-maintained. I think that those are all good things, but I think that it's not inclusive enough that I'd like to also see some language in there that talks about security, safety, cost efficiency. And there I'm thinking of our large utility bill, and so I think that I'd like to just see a little bit more in the key result area around that facilities role. And then I had a question.
Did you get that?
Security, safety, and cost effective.
Yeah, and then, and I was just curious on, and I saw this on the other document as well, that under license, it says possession of a valid California driver's license. And I was wondering, is that a core requirement of this job? And what if the person is handicapped and not able to drive? It just concerned me that that's
Then we would
there.
make reasonable accommodation, but because this is a multi-building, multi-outlet business, they really do have to be able to move around.
So it is a core requirement that
Yes.
they have a driver's license?
That was actually a requirement for a lot of the county positions when I was there as well.
Yeah, I saw it on the other document. I just didn't know if that was something that opened us up to any kind of charge of discrimination or anything like that. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the commission or comments? I'm glad we're moving forward.
Well, let's be glad when we find a qualified individual
But the
for the
step,
salary.
the first steps haven't been taken.
Yes.
Okay, there is nothing to vote on here, but did you?
I do have one question. So did you make changes to the job description? Because you had talked about you wanted to do
It's
that.
totally redone.
Because
I mean, it's a new document that never existed before. I had done a draft prior to our discussion. The class specification
Is
is what
not
the
changed.
is not changed.
Okay. So will you date this document to?
Yes, when it's final.
Then that's when we'll approve it.
No, you don't approve the position descriptions. You approve the
The
class
class
specification.
specification.
It's already been approved.
Okay.
the modified version was approved in July of 2008. It's at the top of the class specification sheet.
Okay. Okay. Other comments or questions from the commission? So this can proceed as it is. Okay, any public input, public comment? Okay. The next item is the selection of an auditor.
We put together a background document to try to respond to some of your questions and concerns. So I guess the question is, do you have questions?
Just to be clear, the issue here is that the staff is recommending that we continue to have Beal Soper as our auditor.
For 2 years.
For 2 years and the reasons are in the document. Were there questions?
How many years have they been
About 6,
so far?
right.
So this will make it 8.
That's correct. But we'd had discussion in the past about the fact that in the past, it was considered best practice to change after 5 years. And that actually has changed as a best practice. Yeah, I think you have to look at a variety of different criterion. In this case, with the change in staffing,
Yeah.
that was the reason why we wanted to keep on for a couple of years and then go out for a full-blown bid again. I'd say we certainly are getting our money's worth with Beal Soper.
So based on this recommendation, we'd continue for 1 year, and then 2 years.
Would we enter into a 2-year contract or just enter into a
We
1 year?
don't, we just do an annual agreement, letter of agreement. And it's in the range that the director has the authority to do. It doesn't require a full-blown RFP.
I thought it made sense to have the continuity of, of the auditor while a new finance CFO comes in. And then presumably at that point, maybe then it's time to change.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
seem reasonable.
And what is the policy for changing? I understand the policy for, what was the 5-year policy originally designed to address? That's okay.
I was yes.
Hi, I'm Mark Walsh, Interim Finance Section Manager. The best practice that was drawn up by the GFOA was to rotate auditors 5 years, and that is to maintain the independence of the auditor. And that was the only purpose for that 5-year rotation, but their primary concern is the quality of audit. So when they wrote the best practice, and I was on the committee that helped drafted the best practice that was adopted by the GFOA's executive committee. And what they're looking for is just to maintain independence of the auditor. They thought if they're there forever, they're not independent, they're really part of the library's management. And so they want them to be independent of the financial statements. But in drafting that practice, they made that not a looser standard, but they recognize that there's limited auditing resources within communities that have the expertise necessary to deliver the services. And so they made it just a recommendation. They didn't make it an absolute. And so their primary concern is the quality of the audit. And then they recognize that one of the reasons that you would depart from a 5-year change of auditor is continuity of service when that need is enhanced. And that's exactly the situation that you're encountering now. So your long-term CFO left in December. I'm interim and part-time, and I'll be here. My intention is to help through June. Then when you do a recruitment and you bring in the next person, they then will have some continuity between me and the next person. And so what'll happen is you'll have the same auditor. The services are very high, and then one of the reasons I recommend them is their communication about what an audit report is, and their communications, what your options are when you address long-term liabilities, are very high, very good quality compared to what I I've observed from other resources. So it's my recommendation that you use them for the June 13 and June 14 books when you close those books. And then also, when you're finished with the year 14-15, do not exclude them from answering to the RFP if they choose to respond to your request for proposal for audit services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the commission or comments? Any questions or comments from the audience?
The only thing, I would note that this policy says that the JPA requires we do an annual audit. Actually, if you read the JPA literally, it requires that the county auditor do an annual audit, but I'm not convinced that that would be better or cheaper for us.
I'm wondering,
Mark, did you have something to say on that?
No, I'd rather not. Thank you very much. I used to work with the county, I used to audit for the county, and I was their interim audit manager, so it's probably best that I don't comment on that. But I do think that you received high-quality services at a very good price, and you would with either auditor. It's just something that is probably better that I don't select the auditor or go to that. But
my question's in regard to the scope of the audit, and it says the current auditor meets the scope requirements, but then it says, I do recommend that the library's management prepare the required management discussion and analysis document to be included in the financial statements, and I'm wondering why we haven't done that in the past.
I can speak to that item as well if you'd like. Normally when the financial statements are drawn, in today's standards, since the year 2002 with the adoption of GASB 34, there's a requirement for for a full comprehensive annual financial report that you draft a management discussion and analysis. And normally your financial officer would do that for you. They would draw that and then bring it to your executive director, then the executive director would bring that to the commission with the financial statements. And it explains the year-to-year changes in the bigger numbers, and also reflects what your intentions are for the future, how you're going to manage economically changes in your long-term assets, rather than just manage your funds, which is, cash in, cash out of a fund bucket. So that is something that I'd like to establish, and that's why I put that in the letter. The auditor's responsibility is just to look at that MD&A and make sure and ensure that it doesn't severely depart from the actual financial statements, but it's not a part of what they call the basic financial statements. And so that they express an opinion on, they say it should just go with them. So that's why you've been getting a clean audit opinion without the MD&A. But I feel that it's something that your commission would be interested in. It's a valid goal of the finance section, and that we should do very soon, like when you next get an annual financial report. It should accompany that audit report.
And the point being that it's not something that's done by the auditor, it's something that's done by the chief financial officer. And
absolutely correct. It's a responsibility for the finance section to present normally to the executive, and the executive section edits it, and it's the organization's discussion to the public about what happened to the money in the big, in the long term, maybe including changes in your long-term retirement liabilities, what your long-term economic and financial goals are, and what you see coming down the road. So it's not the auditor's responsibility, it's mine, and it's something that you would normally see in your next report.
And you're going to be around for that?
It's unlikely that I'm actually going to write it and that I'll be around for that, because I have other opportunities that I'm going to have to pursue. So it's a timing issue that I likely won't be here after June. But if you recruit the next person that's coming in, I'm more than willing to work with them, show them how we could draft MD&A. What I'd like to do is sit down and talk to them about what it looks like and what it means. It's not that hard to do. You've done a lot of really good work, and there's been a lot of financial discussion already from the commission, both in your budget documents and your annual financial reports. is sitting right there in front of you, so it's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of putting that document together. So if I can work a little bit with the new person coming in, it'll help them get a good start with it.
Other comments, questions? Okay, thank you.
Kathy DeWeese is here to report on the next item.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hello. After our last meeting, we had that question that came up about the line item in the annual operating budget for literacy, which is the 7180, and how that related to the numbers that were in the literacy budget that we presented to you. The budget that we presented to you is the working budget that is given to the literacy program, created in tandem with the budget and finance staff and the literacy program. We discovered when we went to look at those figures together that there was a discrepancy of about $1,300, $1,389, which was a difference in the budgeted amount minus the two pieces that are listed in the salary and benefits line, was $1,389 more than what is in the 7180 operating budget. So we did make an adjustment to the working literacy budget to match the correct figures that are in the operating budget. Does that make sense? Sorry, it sounded more clear when I said it earlier. So if you look on the actual revised working literacy budget document, the total expenditure number at the bottom of the second column, the 148,151, has been adjusted from the previous 149,540. And then that number, which is pretty much everything except for the administrative aid half-time position, and I think it's 0.1% of my position, which are in the salary and benefits line. Everything else adds up correctly to the 7180 literacy budget line. So I think that answers the question that you had asked the last meeting. Is that correct?
And then there was a question that what showed up, and the rest was salary?
Uh-huh.
Is that?
Yeah, if you look at the bottom of the document, there's a bolded, starred piece there, and it says expenditures included in salary and benefits character 5,000
Okay, yeah.
equals 60,298, and that is the under
Right.
expenditures, the SCL employee salary and benefits, those two positions, the administrative aid and the children's coordinator under library, that's what that is.
Right.
So that it is separate from the 7180. Another question that came up at that last meeting, which isn't fully answered here, and I was actually just talking to Mark about it before. You asked a question, Helena, about if the expenditures last year was only this much money, why was this much money allotted this year? And what was explained to me was that the budget, the way the previous finance manager did the budgeting is she took the previous 3 years and averaged them to get a target number for the budget line. In this fiscal year, we did not know we were going to be getting the grant money, and so what I understand from the staff was that they took that average of 3 years and then they added 10% to that in the assumption that we would not be getting that grant money, and that's what that 87,853. That's what that number works out to be. Okay.
Other comments, questions?
We will attempt to be more right on the first time next year when we do this report.
Thank you. Public input, public questions, comments? All right. Follow-up item staff reports. Do we have any?
Yeah, there's two more.
There's two more, but we don't have any.
No, you don't have any paper.
Okay, all right.
The answer on the utilities cost is that this year's utilities cost on the table last time ran through January of 2013. So it was the first 6 months essentially. And David's not here. He was assigned the materials budget buying power question, and so he's not here to respond to that one.
Okay.
He's sick today. So we'll just postpone.
So carry that over?
Pardon?
You're going to carry that over to the next one?
Any clarification from the public about the clarification on the utilities by branch? All right, moving on to library board appointments, lab appointments.
I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint Dylan Bursick to the youth member position on the Healdsburg Library Advisory Board for a term ending June 30th, 2015.
I'll second.
I've known Dylan for probably 6 or 8 months. He's a sophomore at Healdsburg High School. Very, very conscientious and enthusiastic young man. I hope he continues with that, because what happens with a lot of the young members and, other things distract them in high school, understandably. And, but right now, he looks like he's going to be a really valuable member.
Do you think he'll be able to come to the conclave, or?
I'll push him a little bit.
Because the
Yeah.
youth member last year was quite.
Yeah, I'm not sure Barbara Rosen, who was the chair of the lab, I don't know if she has spoken to him about it, but I'll follow up with it.
Okay. Did I hear a second from you? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. We're about to move into closed session to discuss evaluation of the library director. Is there any public comment before we move to closed session?
I'm Nancy Kurtz. I work at the Northwest branch of the library. I worked as a sub for many years before I took that position. I just want to say that I'm very disappointed and saddened by what the management and the library commission has done in hiring a lawyer to come to be the negotiator with the labor relations. The staff members voluntarily, 5 years ago, opened up the contract and gave up out of the goodness of their heart in order to help the library in a tough time that turned out not to be as tough as we had been led to believe. And now, 5 years later, we're still not able to get a COLA. And the amount that has been paid for the lawyer could have paid for the COLA. It has made the negotiations much more adversarial, and it just really is, it really hurts to think that when we have given up so much and we work so hard, that the commission doesn't see that and doesn't respond in the negotiating team for the management didn't even bring you our last proposal.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission? I noticed a little lean forward there, but all right. We will move into closed session. Thank you. We'll not return to this room.